a little bit with giving you a little bit of background. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and my mom and dad were separated when I was really young. My dad was very angry, abusive, and he cheated on the women he was with, and I got to see that firsthand. My mom was also angry, and I got the feeling she never really respected men either. And with my dad, we moved all over the place, all over Pennsylvania. At one point, he was living in his car. We were just always moving. And throughout high school, my mom stayed in the same place, so I got to grow up in the same house as she did. My dad saw a lot of women. The first one that I can remember, her name was Kim. He got married to her, and I think that was the longest relationship he was ever in. But that didn't last too long. After that, my dad started having a lot of girlfriends, and he'd take me over to other women he was seeing on top of his other girlfriends. And the one that I really remember, her name was Sally. We keep in contact to this day. She's actually the only girlfriend of my dad's that wanted to keep in touch with me. And I really loved her a lot. When my dad split up with her, we tried to keep up a communication, and when my dad found out, he would ground me and tell me that I shouldn't be talking to her anymore because if she's out of his life, she should be out of mine. And so I tried to learn not to become attached to people because they would go away, and I wasn't supposed to keep in touch with them. I remember when I was 13 was when a lot of stuff started for me. I got into drinking. I began to drink a lot with friends, and I also got into pornography. I got addicted to pornography. And I also met my first boyfriend at the time, who was actually my stepbrother. My dad married a woman named Donna, and his name was Matt. He was 16, and I was 13 when we first met. And when my dad would go to sleep, he would come into my room, and we got really, really close. And I really thought that I loved him. I thought that this was it, that this was the guy I was going to marry. And yeah, everybody, my friends, my family told me that he was a jerk, that I just needed to stop. And I just thought nobody knew him like I did. And when Dad's marriage to Donna started to decline and I began to get depressed, I started to see that I think I knew in my mind that if the marriage failed, I wouldn't see Matt anymore. And so I was having a lot of trouble with that. Donna got pregnant with twins, and I thought this was going to save our marriage. This was going to save the marriage, and everything was going to be fine. The twins died, and I remember thinking at the funeral that this is it. This is the end of my life as I know it. And they began to get ready for their divorce, and Matt realized what was going on, and he just completely ignored me, completely. And he was the most important thing to me, and I just felt completely lost. And I began contemplating suicide, and it was just over. All the pain I felt, it was everything I identified with. That was all I was the pain and anger. And next thing I remember, I was on the ground, and all my emotion was gone, everything. I just felt empty and just so tired. And I heard a voice. It said, "Stop. Get up, go upstairs, and go to bed. You're going to wake up tomorrow morning. When you do, it's going to be hard, but you're going to be okay." And I just kept hearing that echo in my mind, "You're going to be okay." And I went upstairs and I went to bed, and it was the best night's sleep I'd had probably in years. I don't know when the turning point was, but I came out of that, the beginning of 9th grade year, with a determination that I was going to get out of the place I was in. I was going to put myself into my studies, and I was going to make a life for myself. I think in my junior year, the Army came to school, and they put on this great show about how, you can make your life, you can pay for school, you can do whatever you want, just go to the Army. and I got hooked in. So me and my best friend at the time took our ASVABs, and when I got my scores, my stepdad was in the Navy, and he and my mom talked me into going to see the Navy recruiter with my scores, so I did, and they told me I qualified to be a nuclear engineer. So they told me the courses I would need to take: physics, calculus, chemistry. So I doubled up on my math and science, and that's all I focused on, just getting my schoolwork done. I got sworn into the Navy at 17 with my parents' permission, and I worked with them through high school. I would go and train with them, and I have never been so focused on anything. In senior year, we were doing a mile walk. It was one of the last days of school, and about halfway in, my knee it buckled, and I didn't know what was going on, but it hurt. I couldn't put any weight on it. I had one of my friends carry me back to school. And a little while later, my mom took me to see a chiropractor, and he figured out the kneecap it came out of place. And he popped it back in and told me it would be about a month to heal the tendon before I could do any kind of physical activity again. So at this time, when my mom and my stepdad moved, he had gotten a new job and they had an apartment, so I went to visit them in Florida in August, really, really hot, and I got a call from the military, from the Navy, and they were booting me out of the program, and they basically said, you had your job all set up, now there's a waiting list, so in a year, reapply, you probably won't get the same job you have, so good luck, and just kind of cast me aside. I moved to Florida. I made a new set of friends, and they showed me that the ale house across the street, if you wore your uniform, they wouldn't card you. So the nights that I got done late, we would all go out for drinks, and that became my life. I hated my job. I just hated life. I was still so angry at God for saving it because I just thought it was so useless. And my mom talked me into coming to church, and I met Pastor Rick, and I didn't really know what to think at first. My experience with pastors were that they were hypocritical and they really didn't practice what they preached. So I was kind of wary, and I was still really angry at God, and I just wanted to get my knee healed and go back in the Navy. And I got connected with some people at the church. We actually connected through video games. I think that if I hadn't had that connection, I probably wouldn't have kept coming to church. It was really those were the times I looked forward to, the video game nights, and I really felt like I could connect. And I started going to the youth group, and I remember one instance, Pastor Rick was talking, and I really wasn't paying attention. I was talking to some guy about, I don't know, something about video games, and he turned to me and said, "Asia, what do you want to do for God?" And I stopped and I looked at him and I said, I don't want to do anything for God. He can heal my knee, and then I can go to the Navy, and then you guys won't see me anymore. And so life just kept going on like that, and I started getting respect for Pastor Rick. I saw how he was with his family, with his wife, how he truly loved his wife, and it was one of the first good relationships I'd ever seen. I didn't know that they existed. I just I wanted more. I wanted to see what he had that I didn't. And at this time, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Youth with a Mission, but a lot of the people through this church have gone to that program. And a good friend of mine at the time went to it, and we kept in contact while he was away. We were texting, and I just remember one day I was texting him. I was getting ready for work, and he was telling me about all these great experiences he had, and he asked me how I was doing, and I said, I hate my life. I said, I wake up and dread going to work, and then I drink to forget, and that is my life. And all he said was, he just said, "Come to YWAM." So I did. So I thought, if I went to Youth with a Mission for God, then he would heal my knee, and then I could leave. I never let go of the Navy dream. I just kept thinking, if I do enough for God, he was going to heal me, and then I could go. He'd let me go. And I I went, and I remember the first day in, I was laying down. It's beautiful there. There's just fields of wildflowers, and I laid down there, and I heard somebody calling my name, like whispering, and I just felt like I was home. And God really brought some amazing people into my life. Us girls were sitting having lunch, just wondering what was going on, and we received a message that the guys wanted all the girls in our class to come to the classroom. So we did, and they had set up a circle of chairs, and these guys on their lunch break had gone to the mall and picked out soap and bought roses, and they all took turns washing our feet and praying over us, and they gave us each a flower at the end, and it was just one of the most powerful things. Never received flowers or anything from a guy without some kind of string attached, and it was just because you could feel the love in them, and it was a beautiful thing, and it just changed my life forever. I began sharing my testimony. I got to share my testimony a couple times at church, and I really got to impact a couple of people's lives. I met a girl who was suicidal herself, and we got to talk. I was there for a couple weeks. It was in Oklahoma, and I got to really talk and meet with her, and I got to see her change, and it was really great being able to be used of God that way. And I think in that I really began to realize that my true purpose wasn't what I thought, wasn't what I could do for myself, but what I could do for God, and it was the only way I could have hope in this world. And so I came back from that, and I mean, I've been here for the last couple of years, and it hasn't been easy, but I feel like now I have hope in God that He will continue to lead me. I am such a different person than I was a couple years ago, and I have only God to thank for that. So that's part of my story. Thank you guys for listening.